Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to Freebeat, where I post new music-related content every single day. So if that sounds good to you, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell. Let's get started. Today, I've got another five tips and tricks for you guys for the Teenage Engineering OPZ. Of course, the OPZ is just incredibly feature-rich and incredibly versatile. It can do so much, and I'm always learning something new about it. So I've got another 5 tips for you guys. If any of these are new to you, be sure to leave a like on the video. And if you have any of your own tips that I haven't covered yet, be sure to leave them in a comment down below, and I will feature them in a future video because I'm sure there's going to be more tips and tricks videos on the OPZ. Also, these videos tend to get more comments from folks who are kind of new to the OPZ or might have questions. So if you see someone that has a question and you know the answer, feel free, help them out. Of course, this is a very daunting instrument, and we just need to make sure that everybody understands it as best that they can, because that's how we're going to get the most music from this. So without further ado, let's jump into the tips. So we're going to start with a blank pattern right here. And for number 1, it's actually a new kind of method of recording that I've discovered. Well, new to me anyway. It's really interesting. And I don't know exactly how practical it is yet, but it's programmed in, so obviously the developers thought it was something cool. So let's just go to the kick drum track. We're going to hold record. Now you guys know that you can hold record and just press these buttons and it'll fill in each step, which that's cool. We'll clear that track real quick. But you can also hold record, and you'll notice that the first LED is kind of yellow. You can use the plus and minus buttons to shift where you are in the 16-step grid right there, which is really, really interesting. So you could put a bass drum right there, put one right there, there. I don't know, I'm just kind of going random here. And you can go backward or forwards, and any sound you want. Now, I'm not sure how practical this would be since you can't really do it live, but it is another way of inputting notes, and like I said, the developers put it in there for a reason. So if this appeals to you and how you want to work, you know, how your brain works with music, then by all means, go ahead and use it. All right, next up, let's get a snare drum on there. Let's just go on 2 and on 4. We'll get the click track out of there too. So tip number 2 has to do with micro timings. So each step can be shifted in 12 micro steps, basically, in either direction. So for a total of 24. And it's kind of hard to describe, but it's kind of like quantizing, but doing it manually. So to do that, we want to first select our step that we want to shift around timing-wise. We're going to hold it till it starts repeating. Then we're going to use the plus and minus buttons. So I'm pressing plus. You'll notice this key right here is flashing purple. The more purple it gets, the further away from this flat on the beat count our snare drum is going to be. Let's listen. We can hear it's really quite off. So you probably don't want to do it to the extreme like that. The timings are really, really tight. So you can hear that the snare drum is off there, but just barely. It just barely pushes ahead of the pattern. Let's get this one a little early. It's a really, really cool feel, and you can get some pretty cool stutter effects this way, not necessarily with a repeated trigger like a traditional stutter, more of a stagger, like a feeling of kind of maybe you're walking down the street, maybe you've had a little too much to drink, and you're trying to play the drums. That's kind of what this can do. Again, it's like quantizing, but doing it manually, and you get to pinpoint exactly where on the grid, well, actually in between the steps on the grid, you want your trigger to be. All right, next up we're going to need a bass track here. So let's go ahead and record something. Awesome. And for this example, I'm going to turn the release way up on the bass. So we can hear it rings out there. So this next tip is something that Teenage Engineering calls panic and super panic, and it's sort of an all sound off feature, and it's very handy for when things go wrong live. I know musicians don't like to talk about that, but things do go wrong. It will happen, and this is kind of a nice oh bleep button, as I would call it. So let's say we do have a sound with a really long release like this bass, and something goes wrong, we need to stop the pattern. Well, we're going to hit stop, but that note is still going to ring out. So you need to hit stop again, and it will stop any currently triggered notes from playing. The phrasing and the wording of that is very important. Any triggered notes. So pressing stop once will stop the pattern and stop any future notes from being triggered. Pressing stop again will stop any of the notes that have been triggered from playing. Now there's one step further we can go with this, and to demonstrate it, we're going to go to our effects N1, which I've got delay on effects N1. We're going to crank it way up. This is going to sound awful, but watch what happens. I'm going to press stop once, stop twice, but you can still hear the effect plays out. That's why I said pressing it twice stops all triggered audio. It doesn't stop any effects that might linger. To do that, we need to double press the stop button after pressing it once to stop the pattern. So I'm going to press it once to stop it, and then double tap it to stop everything. Just like that. And that can be very, very handy in a live setting because, like I said, stuff goes wrong. Almost any professional piece of music gear has an all sounds off button. Just a critical feature to have when you're performing live. So that's panic and super panic, or yeah, oh bleep. So basically, if you're in a live setting, you need to stop everything, just mash the stop button as many times as it takes to get everything to stop playing. This next one is something that I just recently learned, and that is that the OPZ has a master compressor and master gain control. I had no idea. It's super, super easy to use too. Just hold down the mixer button on top. So of course, this controls the volume of all the drum tracks. This controls the volume of all the synth tracks. This one right here, the yellow knob, when you're holding down the mixer button, controls your master compressor. Not very noticeable with this track, but it's there. The red knob is your master gain control. So this is gain for all 16 tracks. Got to be careful not to clip with this one. I had no idea that was in there, and that would have saved me a lot of time fiddling with stuff when I was working on my album. I have no idea how I missed that. So the last tip for today, tip number 5, is probably something that I'm not going to use, at least in the foreseeable future, but I know a lot of you that use this as a master sequencer will definitely appreciate if you don't already know about it. So when you hold the mixer button, of course, you get access to all 16 of your tracks. You can turn them on and off. So we can mute the bass drum track, we can mute the bass track, mute the snare track, and so forth. But did you know that you can actually mute the track as far as audio, but still have the OPZ send MIDI data for that track? It's super easy. Hold the mixer button, tap shift. Shift is going to turn red. So now, whatever you mute will mute the audio, but not the MIDI data. So I muted the bass drum. The bass drum track right now is still sending MIDI data if I were to have MIDI out, either of the OP Lab module or the Type-C port. It's just not sending audio. And you can actually mix and match between tracks that are completely muted and tracks that just have the audio muted. So right now the kick drum track is not sending audio, but it is sending MIDI data. The snare drum track is not sending audio, nor is it sending MIDI data. And the bass track is sending audio and sending MIDI data. Very handy. So I hope you guys learned something new from this video. If you did, if you enjoyed it, go ahead and leave a like on it. If not, you can leave a dislike, that's okay too. Doesn't hurt my feelings, just makes me try that much harder next time. Either way, be sure to hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell. Thanks so much for being here. Check out those links in the description below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.